Hey, we're Rick and Stephanie from Back to the Passport, and I absolutely love spooky season and all things haunted, and have taken to booking ghost tours whenever and wherever we travel. And luckily, Rick is down for all my ghostly explorations, right?
Yeah. That's one of the first things we kind of started doing together when we started dating. And I like them. I like the history behind the ghost stories, and different cities have different stories, similar stories. So it's
Yeah.
interesting to see all that.
I mean, I would definitely say between the two of us, I'm a believer and you're a skeptic.
We could say that.
I mean, I'm the one buying EMF meters and spirit boxes to take with us when we stay at haunted hotels, but it's definitely something fun that we've enjoyed doing together. And since spooky season is in full swing, I thought it'd be really fun to do a top 10 video on the ghost tours we've done and all the haunted cities that we visited. So, starting us off at number 10 is Paris. And we were actually just there in September, and we obviously went on a ghost tour. Though this tour did lean a little more dark and macabre history of Paris than like visiting actively haunted sites. We did stop at the Rue de Chant, which is said to be the most haunted street in Paris, as it's home to little kid ghosts. Unfortunately, some children living at the orphanage on the street did perish in a flood in the 1900s. And even when we were there, there's some like street art depicting a ghostly child, so you know exactly where you are if you are walking along that street. Also, on our Paris Dark City Secrets tour, we learned about the Sweeney Todd of Paris, the man who was killed for being a wizard, how the mafia would use dead fish to cover up their killings, the 1981 Cannibal of Paris. There's also the Duchess who perfected poisons and was indeed fed her own poison at one point. And then we visited the site of the hanging tree where the guillotine used to sit and heard how Parisians were a bit annoyed that the guillotine was a little too quick in doing its job in killing people. Overall, the tour was really fun, and I think it did help that our guide Leo was just so animated and excited to share these stories. But like I said, it definitely stayed closer to true history than like someone was thrown across the room, like the types of stories that you will hear on other types of ghost tours.
Hear a lot of voices and went on to a different city, Orléans in France. So, two stories. The first one is that he said that he started, working on the doors, fell asleep, and when he woke up, the job was done. Live executions with a big audience. We didn't have theaters, we didn't have Netflix, we needed a way, to entertain ourselves. So one of the things they did is that they created the wheel. The wheel would go on every day, and the way it works, of course, you would be blindfolded.
I would say if you prefer to hear like real history and some more like grisly and gruesome tales, this is a really good pick if you're looking for a ghost tour in Paris. If you want the hairs on the back of your neck to stand up as you hear about spirits still sticking around, this might not be the best tour for you. And just some good to know information, the tour was about 2 hours in length and cost us about $32 in US dollars per adult. So,
Next on our list, we've got Quebec City, and we were there in May of this year, I believe. We did a dark history tour of the city, and it was more focused on true tales rather than things going bump in the night. And as a skeptic, I appreciate things like that. So it's like you can actually look these up in a history book and see, okay, this actually did happen. These are real people. So a few of the things we learned about is like what would happen if the early citizens were found guilty of treason. We learned about a cursed captain, a tortured executioner, a witch in her interesting confinement, we'll say. Haunted homes built on top of smallpox cemeteries, and much, much more. So the one thing I liked about this one, the tour guide was very, we already said animated, so I can't use that.
He was animated too?
He was animated also. He was in full period dress, spoke with an old-timey accent. He was clearly from an acting school or something, so we really got into it.
Sure.
So I really liked that. And it was about a 90-minute tour. And we were walking a lot, so over the hills up and down of Quebec City.
Yeah.
And adult ticket was $25 for this tour.
And that was one that we actually did with my whole family, so that was kind of fun. But again, good to note there are lots of hills in Quebec City, so you are on the
Wear your
move.
walking shoes.
All right. Coming in at number 8, we've got London. So, given how old the city of London is, it's really no surprise that the city has quite a few haunted locations and active ghosts and ghouls. We've done a few ghost tours in London, and I've done the Jack the Ripper tour with some girlfriends when I went years ago. And on the Jack the Ripper tour, we obviously stopped at the 10 Bells, the bar that's associated with Jack the Ripper and his neighborhood, and a few of his victims, supposedly. And the pub is said to be home to like cold spots, ghostly apparitions, and like the sound of footsteps moving down an empty hallway when no one's supposed to be there. There have also been stories of poltergeist activity in and around the pub, like perhaps the angry spirit of his victims who visited the pub before their untimely deaths. On a tour without you, I also visited the Tower of London, which has its own haunted history. It's easy to see why as you walk around past the torture devices that are on display and hear about the beheadings that took place here. It's said that Queen Anne Boleyn was beheaded at the tower in 1536, and some have reported seeing her ghost carrying her own head around the property. It's also rumored that other royal family members were murdered here as well, and to this day, they like to scream in the Bloody Tower. At the Tower of London, others also report seeing a white lady or smelling her perfume as they make their way around the grounds. There are said to be more than 10 individual ghosts haunting the Tower of London, though there may be more who can't leave the place that brought them so much suffering in life. A tour that you and I did do was with London Walks, where we heard about a canine ghost who likes to scare people by running out into traffic. We also heard about the man in grey who haunts the Theatre Royal on Drury Lane, and the ghost that rings in the new year with a tradition most of us don't want to partake in by jumping off the Westminster Bridge. I'm going to stick to drinking champagne at midnight, but you do you, ghost. And the nice thing about the London Walks tours, or at least that I like with them, is that you can reserve a spot online. Otherwise, they just tell you the meeting location and you just show up and pay them. I think the tours are now like £15 per person. Definitely check the website before going, but they offer some really interesting ghost tours, Jack the Ripper tours, just the spooky side of London. All right, I'm also going to take number 7, which is Nashville, as we've both been to Nashville, but on separate trips. We have yet to go there as a couple. But I was there for work, and I had a free night, and so of course I was online searching for a ghost tour of the city to occupy my evening. And I found the Murder in Music City ghost tour with Ghost City Tours. And we learned about the ghosts that continue to haunt the Capitol building, took tons of photos looking for ghostly specters. Didn't see any. I'm sure if I really blew up my photos, maybe I'd see somebody looking back at me. We also learned about how Andrew Jackson survived a duel with Charles Dickinson, the ghost that continued to stay checked in at the Hermitage Hotel, which if we ever do go back to Nashville, I know exactly where we're staying because I want his feet to get pulled out from the bed some night.
Me too.
We also did a quick walk by the Climax Saloon, so 2 guesses as to what certain district it got its namesake from. And then we did a quick stop at Printer's Alley and Skull's Rainbow Room that welcomes ghostly visitors. The tour I did in Nashville was about 90 minutes and was $35 per adult, but it was just a really fun way to take a break between visiting the honky-tonk country music bars. I kind of needed a ghostly break from that, but right after that I definitely wanted to warm up with a nice drink and some live music. All right. So number 6 is Seattle. So this is also one that I've done by myself. I went there with some girlfriends, and thankfully they are all also into the supernatural and all things haunted. So we did a ghost tour of Pike Place Market, and we did the Seattle Terrors ghost tour with US Ghost Adventures. And we learned about Kiki Soblu, who haunts the area after her tribe was relocated from the area. And we heard about the bad doctor, Dr. Linda Hazard, whose last name really should have been a giant red flag for anyone seeking her special treatments. And we made sure to keep our hands to ourselves as we walked by the gum wall before stopping at the Butterworth building, which is a former mortuary that is haunted. Easy to see why. And it was also home to the first corpse elevator on the West Coast. Fun fact. So, may still be haunted by some spirits that are trying to find their former bodies. We also heard about the ghost at the aptly named Ghost Alley Espresso coffee shop and the other eternal residents of Post Alley, as well as stopping outside of one of Seattle's oldest buildings, which is the Moore Theater, where no matter how many times the seats are cleaned, they'll still give off the smell of cigar smoke. So on this tour, you can either opt for a 60-minute version or the 90-minute extended tour, and tickets start at $20 per adult for the 60 version. Obviously, me and my friends opted to do the extended version, and it was so worth it. On the extended part, we talked more about like recent thrilling tales, like Ted Bundy's time spent terrorizing Seattle, and Gary Ridgway, also known as the Green River Killer. So this tour had the perfect mix of true crime, history, and those active hauntings that I'm always on the lookout for.
All right, next, number 5, we got Estes Park, Colorado. So this is just kind of a short drive for us, and we go up there, well, I'm going to try to get there more often, maybe like once a year or so. But the city of Estes Park is beautiful on its own, right at the foot of Rocky Mountain National Park. Then the Stanley Hotel is one of the most iconic hotel in Estes Park, which has its own storied history, lots of ghosts and ghouls and history around the building. So every time we're there, we like to do a tour. And we were just there last weekend. We did their nights, what did they call it?
Isn't it just the night tour? The ghostly night tour?
The night tour, yes. Very original. So again, one of the things I like about the Stanley tours is they talk lots about ghosts, but they also talk about just the history of the hotel, how it came to be, and a few of the things that you'll see along the tour. We start in the main building. We're told some of the history and stuff there, and in the main building is the billiards room, which we got to, it's roped off to anyone that's not on a tour. People only on tours are supposed to go in there. So we got to hear some of the stories about that in that room. You'll hear stories of F.O. Stanley, the founder, and his wife Flora. You might see them around from place to place. And then we went to the concert hall, which is another building on the Stanley property. I learned about a couple ghosts there. There's Paul, I believe, caretaker. Yep, Paul the caretaker. Which if you're there past 11 p.m., you might hear a voice yelling at you to get out because it's past curfew. Then we went down to the basement of the concert hall where we learned about Lucy, who is a famous ghost that you're going to talk more about.
I've got a Lucy story.
So she apparently likes candy. We did this whole thing with the lollipops, try to get her to move the lollipops in her hands. Then there's also the Lodge, which is another building. There's tons of buildings on the Stanley campus. So the Lodge used to be where the single men stay. So you'll hear a lot of stories around like smelling cologne, or there's a certain ghost that likes to drink your liquor. So be careful with that. Also in the main building, there's stories about people hearing children on the 4th floor, and then a helpful maid in room 217. That's the room that Stephen King stayed in, wasn't it?
I think so.
Like the famous room.
Yep.
Yeah. So there's a few stories about that room. If a single man stays in that room because he's not supposed to be in that building, she'll pack your bags.
Try to get you out.
You might come back and all your bags are packed and shoes are next to the door. At least that's what we've been told. So, but yeah, you've been there a few other times with some friends and have a couple experiences.
Yeah. So before we even met, went up there for my birthday weekend with a bunch of girlfriends who flew in to hang out with me. And we stayed overnight. We took the tour. And yeah, we had a Lucy encounter. And we were down in the basement of the concert hall. And one of my girlfriends, who is a non-believer, but a good sport. So we're sitting in these little folding chairs. We're in the dark. We turned out the lights. The guy's got his little spirit box, so it's supposed to be talking to us. And all of a sudden, she clamps onto my arm. And then I hear, "It's not you." And so we're sitting in the dark, and you can hear her zipper moving up and down. And she apparently thought I had cat eyes and can see in the dark and was messing with her by moving her zipper around. And it was not me, so we supposed that it was Lucy. And then when we went back to the main building, and they encourage you to take photos on this tour, like they want you to send in any evidence you get. And so I think we were actually in the billiards room, and one of the guys in our group was taking a bunch of photos, and then he was looking through them and kind of freaked out and zoomed in on one of the mirrors, and there is a face looking back at you, and it's not the face of anyone who was on our group. So a little freaked out after that. And then we were staying in the lodge, which was the men's quarters, and we had left out some booze for our ghost to drink, and apparently he didn't want our wine. And so we're getting ready for bed, and it's like a suite style setup. So there's a living room area, and then the bedroom is down a hallway. And my friends are getting ready for bed. I'm the last one up. Turn out the lights, start walking down the hallway, and one of my girlfriends is like, "Hey, can you turn off the lights?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about? I already did." Turn around, the lights are back on. I take a step to go turn them off, and they turn off by themselves. And so I ran down the hallway and jumped into bed, where we proceeded to leave The Shining on TV. So sweet dreams for me, I guess. But I'm curious, you didn't feel anything on our tour, did you?
Well, I forgot to mention the last stop was in the tunnel that goes underneath the main building, which they showed us some pictures from there, and people have got some creepy things on their phones. We were nearing the end, and I started to feel I felt something in my gut. Turned out it was just hunger. We had a dinner reservation, so.
See what I put up with. Well, I will say, when we were holding out the candy, so yeah, we just got little dum-dums to hold out for Lucy, and a lot of people in our group are, "Oh my god, it's moving," and it's like, well, yeah, it's your hand. As someone who truly wants to believe, I will admit when the evidence is a little shoddy. All right, moving on to number 4, we've got San Francisco, and the real treat there is the city's haunted buildings. So you and I have actually yet to visit San Francisco together, but that might be happening maybe in the next month or two. Maybe. So here's hoping, but I've been to San Francisco quite a few times, whether it's with my family or for work, and I always make a point to do some sort of ghostly tour while in the Bay Area. So I've done the ghost tour of Alcatraz at night, and it definitely adds a creepy factor to visiting the old prison. I'm not even sure if they still actually do that tour or not anymore. If it is available, it's a really fun one. But the most recent ghost tour I did of San Francisco was with U.S. Ghost Adventures, who operated the Seattle tour I also did, but this one was correctly named the San Francisco Ghost Tour. So my sister was with me on this trip, and seeing as we both love all things ghostly, we were so excited for this tour where we learned about the lost souls that were lost during the 1906 earthquake and fire, just some of the people that are still hanging around in some of the buildings that were lost during that. We visited the Fairmont Hotel, which is one of the structures in Nob Hill that did survive the 1906 earthquake, and a structure said to be haunted by the Fair Sisters of the Fairmont Hotel and other entities. We also stopped at the James C. Flood Mansion, which is the current headquarters of the secretive and elite Pacific Union Club that may or may not be sitting atop something more sinister. We also heard about the maids at various San Francisco hotels that would quit their jobs after seeing shadowy humanoid figures or being pranked by the ghosts, like cleaning a room and then going back and checking on it and the room being in disarray. I'd probably want to give up after that too. And we also learned about the Freemasons' work in Union Square and one ghost that is tied to the activities and is unfortunately stuck repeating his death for all eternity. And then lastly, we learned about the chief of the San Francisco Fire Department, who still responded to the call of duty even after his own departure from this world. This was a 1-hour ghost tour, and it started in Union Square, covered Nob Hill, and was $25 per adult. If we do end up going in November, do you want to do the spooky tour of San Francisco?
Well, absolutely. Yeah. All right. So up next, we've got Edinburgh at number 3. Another place that we were this year, actually about a month or so ago. About a month ago we were in Edinburgh. So, of course, there's 2 things we like to do when we travel. It's ghost tours and food tours. So we found a good ghost tour in Edinburgh. It was operated by Mercat Tours. It's called the Doomed, Dead, and Buried Tour. And the main focus of it was the Blair Street Underground Vaults.
When we mention this to visitors, some have complimented us on the wax figure that we have. They describe a short, balding man working away on shoes in the corner, just over here. Now you might notice we don't have a wax figure in that corner. What people have seen is the spirit of a cobbler still working away on his profession to this day. Now you have to know that cobbler's a friendly spirit, thank you. Sometimes he likes to get up from that spot. He begins to walk around, he looks at shoes people are wearing, sees what modern technology has done to his profession. If any of you feel any tapping at your feet, do not worry. It's just the cobbler. Check what shoe size you are. The thing is, he's a friendly spirit, the cobbler. So friendly, in fact, he seems to keep the watcher out, because the watcher has never been seen in the room you're standing in now. The watcher has been seen in it, a place that you could spend some time with a roof over your head without worrying about the world around you. In rooms at the side of this, we could see families of 12 within these vaults. They wouldn't have much their name, stool, a couple of buckets, maybe a plate or 2, and this would be children, parents, grandparents. They would be living a horrible life above ground and below. Edinburgh had overcrowdedness after all. In fact, to give you an idea...
We didn't start there. We started... What was the building that we started out in front of? Do you remember?
The St. Giles Cathedral?
St. Giles Cathedral. We met our group there, proceeded to go around the side of the building where we heard one of our first stories. There's a grave under a parking lot there now. And the specific parking spot that it's under, a woman likes to park there because the grave is of a man who believed that women didn't have a place in politics. So she likes to park there. It's kind of a
purposely
screw
piss
you
him off.
We heard a lot of stories about the story of half-hanged Maggie. We learned about William Barton and his deal with the devil, that no man could kill him, and no man did. And then we moved on to the Blair Street Underground Vaults. Like I said, that was really cool. Even without the ghost aspect, just what was it? It's the space under one of the bridges there that the buildings have been built up. So like you can't tell that it's a bridge, but it still has everything underneath of it. So there's a bunch of stories in there. There was Jack, who was a child who'll hold your hand.
I held my hand out for him. He did not grab it.
Me neither. There's Cobbler. I don't remember what they said about him.
So he was the one that people would think was like the wax figure. Like they would come into his room and they'd be like, "Oh, that's clever," and they'd be like, "What are you talking about?" And then he would be gone.
There's nothing there. And then Mr. Boots, or also known as the Watcher.
He does not like to be called Mr. Boots. Or no, did he not like being called the Watcher?
One of those two.
Oh,
I don't know. I think the Watcher is pretty ominous, so I prefer to go by the Watcher.
I'd go by the Watcher too instead of Mr. Boots.
Right. It's not like a cat. Then the last stop on that tour was to Canongate Graveyard. We learned about body snatchers, murderers. I think there were also some famous graves there that I cannot remember the names of. But we also stopped at, this was after the tour, we stopped at Greyfriars Kirkyard, which is a little famous because you can spot some names from Harry Potter. I guess J.K. Rowling went through there and got some inspiration for some of her characters. There's
smart.
There's a McGonagall. Was there a Snape?
I think Snape is there.
Yeah, a few.
There's
Tom Riddle.
Yeah.
So that's a cool stop. Again, that was outside of our tour, but it's still kind of spooky. Another place we went outside of the tour was Edinburgh Castle. We didn't come across any ghosts, but it's said to be haunted by several. Obviously, it's centuries or thousands of years old. It's an old as shit castle. So the most notorious haunting is that of the Black Mausoleum. It's the final resting place of Sir George Mackenzie, aka Bloody Mackenzie. So that's a nice
better than
nickname.
Mr. Boots.
He was said to be responsible for the deaths of more than 18,000 Scots. And that's Scottish people, not people named Scott, like our tour guide on this. Actually, that's not a joke. Yeah, our tour guide on this Scottish ghost tour, his name was Scott. I'm not kidding, and it was hilarious. I thought it was hilarious. So there's been hundreds of reports of poltergeist activity happening there after the mausoleum was disturbed in the late 1990s. So since then, visitors have said to have received scratches, bruises, violent, attacks. You want that for me, though?
I wouldn't mind getting scratched. I mean, God, that is irrefutable proof.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much it about Edinburgh. Do you have anything else to add?
No, I mean, I took lots of photos and videos down in the Blair Street vaults, and we've looked through them a little bit, but I think I can do a more thorough examination. I mean, again, it was, even if you're not going for the ghostly aspect, it was really neat to see. It's very different. And maybe you'll get to be watched by the watcher.
Maybe.
Let us know. All right, coming in at number 2, we've got New Orleans. And theme of this video, I guess, is this is another one that I did by myself, as I was in NOLA for work. And again, I'm going to use my free time wisely and explore New Orleans' haunted side. And of course, that meant going to the French Quarter. So on the ghost tour I did, this was with New Orleans Secrets. And on this tour, we talked about the sadistic experiments of Madame Lalaurie and the subsequent hauntings at her mansion. We also talked about the ghost dogs that would lick the fingers of guests at the French Quarter Hotel that once acted as a war hospital. And it's also said that certain soldiers and nurses will like to walk around and make appearances. And again, some people even report getting their fingers licked by the ghost dog that was a therapy animal for the soldiers there. We also talked about the little devilish acts of little boy ghosts at the Andrew Jackson Hotel, which could be a contender if we go back there together, or if I get you out there. We also talked about the ghost who just wanted to be invited to the party at Muriel's, the singing ghostly priest who only wanders through the rain or the fog, and then we actually did talk about the real vampire factions that exist in New Orleans. We also made a quick stop at the Bourbon Orleans, as the hotel once served as a ballroom and theater, a convent, and an orphanage, so it's got a wide range of ghostly encounters waiting for you there. Reports from the hotel include sightings of soldiers, women, and children. And then there's also a dancer who supposedly used to work in the theater. The 3rd and 6th floors are most often where the reports of paranormal activity at this hotel come from. Like I said, the ghost tour was operated by New Orleans Secrets, and it was only $25 for like a nice 2-hour tour of the French Quarter, so I thought it was quite a steal. All right, ready to bring us on home?
Yeah, so last but not least on our list here is our home turf of Denver. We've done a few. Nightly Spirits is the company, so they do a really cool package where it's basically a bar crawl and a ghost tour together. So you stop at like 3 or 4 different bars, and then they'll tell you stories about where you're at and the history of Denver, which, since Denver's Wild West history, there's lots of stories to tell, lots of stuff going on. And they do a couple different ones. They do one, Sobo, which is South Broadway, and then they do Lodo, which is lower downtown, which is the one that we usually do. Yeah. We used to live down there, actually, so it's nice to hear these stories about.
Maybe bring a ghost home with us.
Maybe, yeah. So this one, you'll start off at a pub called the Celtic. And then you will learn about why they don't have mirrors in there. so it's a little bit.
They do now.
Oh,
they
do?
used to not have mirrors in there.
Okay. One of our friends said they felt something in the bathroom, which I don't know if it was a ghost or just the meal, but
We hadn't eaten yet. So
hunger,
debunked.
the hunger. Another stop on this tour is the Oxford Hotel, and they have is it the bars, the cruise room? That's what they call it. And again, outside of the ghost stuff, it's just a cool bar.
It is a cool
It looks
bar.
like the inside of a cruise ship, like an old-timey cruise ship, if I remember right. So there's the ghost of a postman who will come back for a drink at the bar. There's a ghost that haunts room 320, where she murdered her lover and then took her own life. Spooky, perfect for ghosts. And then I guess there's something with bathrooms. They seem to be hotbeds for paranormal activity, because there is a ghost in the downstairs bathroom who just wants you to offer you a shave, since he was a barber. And then Union Station, which you might want to keep your eyes peeled for a young girl who's just looking for a friend to play with. But you've also been to some other places in Denver, right? Without me. You go everywhere without me, apparently.
I've lived in Denver for 13 years, and I'm pretty sure I've done a ghost tour like every September, October since I moved here. So I have done the gamut of ghost tours of the city. Pretty sure I could probably just write a book with like all the stories I've heard.
You should just be a guide.
It. I should be a guide. I would love to be a guide. That'd be amazing.
Be a perfect guide.
But one of the more, I don't want to say scary, but like closer to getting evidence experiences we've had was at the Brown Palace Hotel, which opened in 1892. So kind of no surprise that there are others still hanging out there, just given the hotel's history. And fun fact, there is a tunnel that connected the Brown Palace with the brothel across the street, so the Madame could send the drunk politicians and businessmen back to the hotel in a discreet fashion. The hotel has also spent part of its life as apartments for high society members, and one former resident who still resides in room 904 did not appreciate tours of the hotel taking place and would begin making phone calls to the front desk, even though her room was vacant and no longer had a phone, as she wanted people to stop stopping by her front door. My sister and I stopped outside her room on the ghost tour of Denver to hear her story and see if she would be active for us, but we didn't hear anything there, although our tour guide, who is also a psychic medium, she did bring up some stuff that was actually very personal to my sister and I, so for me, that felt like there was something going on at the hotel. Now, whether or not it was the woman who lived in that room or not, don't know, but it was just a very kind of experience there. The restaurant at the Brown Palace, so Ellington's, is also known for paranormal activity, with lights turning on and off by themselves, shadowy figures appearing throughout the room and the elevator, hearing disembodied voices, and there's sometimes even reports of hearing a string quartet practicing their music, and if any employee goes over to question what's going on, the musicians will say, "It's okay, we live here." My sister and I have also done a tour of the Botanic Gardens, which is right next to Cheeseman Park, which is said to be the inspiration for the movie Poltergeist, as the park and gardens used to be the city cemetery. And let's just say not all the bodies were moved in a proper fashion. Even today, they have plaques around the park saying that if we've got heavy rains, body parts might start popping up. The Botanic Gardens even has a person on staff who will be called in should a bone poke through the ground to make sure that it is an old bone and not some new killer looking for the perfect place to hide their victims, because it is expected that bones will make appearances there. We've done a few tours of the Botanic Gardens before, but we had to do the Ghost in the Garden tour as we got to visit the Waring House. So honestly, knowing that we could go inside this house was like 90% of the reason we booked this tour. You were actually on the tour when we first heard about the Waring House, where the girl like got dragged and like scratched, and like she quit her job immediately at the Botanic Gardens because like she was so scared to ever have to go back in this building ever again. And like the Botanic Gardens agreed to let this woman work remote like way before the pandemic, just because they cared about her and knew that she was not kidding. She would never go back into this building again. The building is also not open to the public, except on this tour and I think private events. And so we were really excited to go check this out, see if we could feel anything or have some experience with some of the dark spirits that lurk in the shadows of the Waring House. I honestly was sufficiently spooked and kind of ready to leave by the time we were wrapping up the tour, as we heard about the ghost of Wade, who's a former staff member who actually seems like a sweet guy. He likes to just smile and wave at the other people that work there today, so he's a pretty nice guy. But then there's a ghost aptly named Darth Vader, as he's a shadowy figure that likes to walk the perimeter of the property and not wave at you. There's also said to be a girl in white, so a young girl who's particularly attached to a certain spot on the grounds. They wonder if that was maybe where her grave used to be, and so she just likes to hang around in that spot. There's also a Jack, which either Jack is just the name that they assign to all little boy ghosts, or
It's the same Jack.
or there were also a lot of Jacks back in the early 1900s, but
I mean, ghosts can travel the ethereal plane and go
Can they?
anywhere. Yeah.
can they?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, at the Botanic Gardens, there's also a little boy named Jack. He is very much a child and just wants to play with people. They've said that, yeah, he'll come up and hold your hand, or he has like some toys that he wants to try and get you to play with while you play with him. And then there's also a lady in white. So she's a spirit that's assumed to be a bride who killed herself on her wedding day and just continues to hang out at the Waring House. But you and I have stopped at Cheeseman Park during some ghost tours before, and you and I have actually stayed at one of the more supposedly haunted Denver hotels, which is the Patterson Inn, or it used to be known as the Patterson Croak Mansion. I'd heard about this mansion and visited it several times on different ghost tours that I've been on, and the creepiest story includes like when the mansion was under construction, the workers would show up to work on it and they would find their tools strewn about or missing, and even sometimes the work that they had done the day before would be undone. So the construction company brought in two like guard dogs to watch the property at night to scare off whoever was doing this. And when they came back to the site, either the dogs had been thrown from the second floor or had jumped to their death. Actually, sorry, I think it's the third floor that it was from. But either way, very tragic for these dogs to either have been so terrified of whatever's in there that they jumped or something did throw them. People have also reported seeing Thomas Patterson roaming the halls, hearing footsteps, hearing babies crying, knocking on the wall, as well as strong foul odors coming from seemingly nowhere. One of our tour guides said she did see a dark figure watching them from the window, and so she refused to go inside. And then the cellar is also said to be a haunted location, but we've had some drinks down there, and it was...
Oh, the bar?
Yeah, it was pretty.
Yeah.
It was pretty cozy. It was pretty nice. Didn't see any ghosts. Didn't feel anything weird, and it's a beautiful hotel. Like, it's a fantastic place to stay if you're wanting to stay in historic Denver. But I definitely like to think it's haunted.
Yeah,
Maybe
I
one
really
of these
like
days.
that one. Yeah, because that was the one we went to on the Doors Open Denver.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't stay there, and then we went back and stayed there later. And yeah, I like cute little hotel.
Yeah.
It was nice.
Well, and that one was weird too, because like the Doors Open Denver, we got to see it, and when we went down to the cellar, or where the bar is now, the bar wasn't built yet. It was still like just the old like basement, and so it was really creepy down there, but they've done it up quite nicely.
Yeah.
And I think now it's open to the public as like a spot for happy hour, so you can go check out that without having to stay at the hotel. All right. Anything else, or what did you think of staying at the haunted hotel?
Yeah, like I said, I didn't
Didn't
see
feel
any ghosts, but it's fun to hear the stories and wonder about it. And, yeah.
One of these days.
One of these days.
All right. That wraps up our countdown of our top 10 ghost tours. If you have any questions about the ghost tours we've done, please feel free to leave us a comment. Or if you've had any ghostly encounters, please tell us where we need to go or what ghost tours we need to book. Otherwise, I invite you to check out our blog at backtothepassport.com for more in-depth reviews of our experiences, as well as other travel-related content. Otherwise, thanks for watching. Ciao.
Ciao.